The room froze when a billionaire noticed his disabled son standing alone, ignored by everyone who claimed to be welcoming. Eyes followed him with quiet judgment, assumptions forming before a single step was taken. Then something unexpected happened. A black waitress see what others refused to see. Not a burden, not a problem, but a human being waiting to be included. In a single quiet moment on the dance floor, power, prejudice, and privilege collided. What began as a simple gesture would expose a truth money could never buy. The question is, were they ready for what it revealed? Before that night, the billionaire's life had followed a predictable rhythm shaped by boardrooms, private jets, and carefully controlled appearances. Success had insulated him from discomfort, and wealth had softened the sharp edges of the world. Yet nothing in his life mattered more than his son, a boy whose physical limitations made even simple movements a challenge, but whose determination quietly outshone the rooms they entered together. The father believed that money could open every door, smooth every path, and protect his child from cruelty. The event was meant to be elegant, a charity gathering hosted in a grand hall where polished smiles and polite applause masked unspoken hierarchies. Guests moved easily through the space, confident in their belonging. The staff, mostly unnoticed, worked tirelessly along the edges of the room, their presence acknowledged only when something was needed. Among them was a black waitress, accustomed to being seen as invisible despite standing in plain sight. As the music swelled and couples drifted toward the dance floor, the billionaire's son remained still. People glanced, then looked away, uncertain, uncomfortable, unwilling to cross an invisible line. The father noticed the hesitation, the subtle distance, and felt a quiet unease settle in his chest. This was not open cruelty. It was something colder, something more familiar. A silent exclusion rooted in assumptions about who deserved space, dignity, and joy. The waitress observed it all from a distance. She had seen this pattern many times before, in different forms, wearing different faces. She recognized the weight of being overlooked, of being judged before being known. What none of them realized was that this ordinary evening, shaped by unspoken bias and quiet indifference, was moving toward a moment that would challenge every belief they carried with them into that room. The tension in the room grew heavier as the evening progressed. The music continued, laughter rose and fell, and yet the space around the billionaire's son remained conspicuously empty. People adjusted their paths to avoid passing too close, their smiles tightening whenever their eyes met his. It was not hostility in its loudest form, but something quieter and more corrosive, discomfort shaped by assumptions about disability, worth, and belonging. The father felt it clearly now. His wealth commanded respect, but it could not force compassion. Across the room, the waitress moved steadily between tables, absorbing the atmosphere with a practiced awareness. She noticed how attention flowed toward power and status, and how easily others were overlooked. Every glance, every hesitation, mirrored experiences she knew too well. She had learned long ago how quickly people reduced others to labels, how effortlessly humanity could be stripped away without a single word spoken. Watching the boy stand alone stirred something deeper than sympathy. It reflected a familiar injustice, one she had faced in different forms her entire life. As the dance floor filled, the contrast became impossible to ignore. Movement, laughter, and celebration surrounded a quiet center of exclusion. The boy's effort to remain composed only sharpened the cruelty of the moment. His father felt anger rise, not explosive but controlled and burning. He scanned the room waiting for someone, anyone, to step forward to prove that kindness still had a place here. No one did. Whispers began to circulate, subtle but sharp. Some questioned whether the child should even be there, whether the evening was appropriate for someone who could not participate normally. Others watched with curiosity, their interest detached, as though observing a problem rather than a person. The silence that followed each glance spoke louder than words ever could. It was clear that the boy's presence challenged the comfort of those who believed inclusivity was optional. Then the waitress slowed her steps. She felt the weight of eyes shift toward her, measuring her place in the room, reminding her where society expected her to remain. The unspoken rules were clear. Serve quietly, stay invisible, do not cross boundaries. But injustice had a way of demanding response, and she had learned that silence only strengthened it. She saw the boy not as a complication, but as someone waiting to be acknowledged. As she moved closer, tension tightened across the hall. The billionaire noticed her approach, uncertain whether hope or disappointment would follow. Guests stiffened, their discomfort now openly visible. The room seemed to hold its breath, caught between expectation and fear of disruption. Power dynamics shifted in real time. Wealth, race, status, and vulnerability colliding in a single unfolding moment. What was about to happen threatened the fragile order everyone had silently agreed to maintain. It risked exposing the prejudice beneath polished manners and charitable gestures. And as the waitress reached the edge of the dance floor, it became clear that this was no longer just about one boy, or one act of kindness. It was about whether dignity would finally be recognized or denied, right in front of them all. The moment unfolded with a quiet intensity that cut through the room more sharply than any confrontation ever could. As the waitress stepped onto the edge of the dance floor, the contrast became unmistakable. A woman society had taught to remain unseen was now standing where only the powerful believed they belonged. Every movement slowed, every sound softened, as attention locked onto a scene no one had planned and few felt comfortable witnessing. She did not rush. She did not perform. Instead, she acknowledged the boy with a calm respect that instantly stripped away the pity surrounding him. With measured care, she followed his lead, allowing his limited movements to guide the rhythm rather than forcing him to adapt. The effect was immediate and profound. The boy's posture changed. His uncertainty eased. In that instant, he was no longer an object of hesitation, but the center of the room's focus. The billionaire felt his breath catch as realization set in. All his influence, all his resources, had failed to give his son what this single act had achieved: recognition without condition. Around them, guests shifted uneasily, confronted with the uncomfortable truth of their own inaction. Some looked away, embarrassed by what was now impossible to ignore. Others stared, unsettled by how easily their assumptions were being dismantled. The dance itself was simple, but its meaning was devastatingly clear. It exposed how deeply ingrained bias could coexist with polite smiles and charitable intentions. It revealed how dignity was often withheld not through cruelty, but through neglect. The waitress's presence on that floor challenged every invisible boundary the room had upheld: racial, social, and economic. As the music continued, silence gave way to something heavier than applause. The room understood that a line had been crossed, not by defiance, but by humanity. The father realized that his son's struggle was only part of a larger truth. What he was witnessing was not just an act of kindness, but a confrontation with a system that decided who deserved space, joy, and visibility. And as the final notes lingered, one undeniable reality settled over everyone watching. This moment could not be undone, and nothing in that room would ever feel the same again. When the music faded, the room did not immediately return to normal. Something fundamental had shifted. The guests resumed their movements, but with a visible hesitation, as though aware that the illusion of civility they had relied on had been quietly dismantled. The boy remained standing, no longer isolated. His presence finally acknowledged without condition. His father felt a weight lift and settle at the same time, relief for his son, and a sobering clarity about the world he had believed he understood. That night did not end with grand speeches or public confessions. Change rarely announces itself so cleanly. Instead, it lingered in the way people avoided eye contact with the waitress afterward, unsure whether to feel ashamed or inspired. It followed the father home, echoing in his thoughts as he replayed every moment where comfort had been mistaken for fairness. He could no longer deny what had been exposed so simply. Privilege had blinded him to struggles that money could never solve. For the waitress, the moment was not a miracle. It was a reminder of how often humanity had to be asserted rather than assumed. She returned to her work knowing that the world would not transform overnight, but also knowing that one visible act could fracture long-standing silence. Dignity, once witnessed, becomes impossible to forget. The impact of that evening extended beyond one family or one room. It reflected a reality faced daily by those judged before they are known, by race, by ability, by status. Racism and exclusion do not always shout. Often, they whisper through avoidance, through lowered expectations, through the quiet decision to do nothing. This story is not about a dance. It is about who is allowed to be seen, who is given space, and who is silently pushed aside. The question it leaves behind is unavoidable. How many moments like this pass unnoticed every day? And how different would our world look if more people chose humanity over comfort when it mattered most?